Welcome to the Big Bag. My name's Mark Machado. I am joined by cricket historian and my good friend and massive watcher of all franchise cricket, Nicholas Brookes. We're both in London, but we're very excited. We're 15 days away from the franchise answer to WrestleMania. That is, of course, the IPL, the Indian Premier League. The engine starts up quite soon. Hey, Nick?
Yeah, let's go. I couldn't believe it when I saw this morning that it was 15 days away. It's always funny when you start a new year and do you know what I mean? For the first couple of months, it doesn't feel like you're quite in 2025. And so in my mind, the end of March still feels a long way away, but apparently it's only 15 days from here.
Yeah, I know. Wow. Let's go, right? So we're starting to get news dripping of what's going on. By the way, I should say, if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, leave your comments. We want to know what you're thinking. We want to know what you're saying. You want to get involved in the conversation. We love that you're here. We love that you're part of it all. If you haven't come across us before, me and Nick came together to make Sri Lankan cricket content many moons ago. When we first started talking, there wasn't much Sri Lankan interest. It was that kind of low point in Sri Lankan cricket. There wasn't much crossover with the IPL, but now there's loads. The Big Bag is a show where we talk about franchise cricket. We have guests on. We've got more guests planned coming up. Obviously, the IPL is, as I said, it's the granddaddy from all. It's the WrestleMania moment of franchise cricket. So we're going to be throwing ourselves into that big time. If you know us from the early end, we'll also be talking about Sri Lanka, what's going on with everything there at Sri Lankan cricket. So don't worry about that. But come on board, hit the subscribe button, leave us your comments, tell us what you think about things. And we love, it's all Cricket Smash is about the conversation. It's about kind of putting fans right in the middle of the whole thing. So yeah, get on board and talk to us. Right, Nick. News feed dripping through. We're also seeing pictures of players in nets and, players who aren't involved in the Champions Trophy. And saw a lovely picture of Murali and Mahesh Tikshna leaked out a few days ago. But the big news this week is coming out of Kolkata, where KKR, last year's champions, have done something slightly unexpected and made Ajinkya Rahane the captain. What's your kind of take on this whole situation?
Yeah, man, I was really surprised by this news. I saw Dan, good friend of the show, post it on Twitter yesterday, and my response was, I smell trouble. Look, I mean, I think when KKR went big for Venkatesh Iyer at the auction, people presumed that they were eyeing him up as a potential captain, given that Shreyas had gone. Rahane, it's a bold call, right? He's almost 37. He had one really good season for CSK a couple of years ago, 2023 in the IPL. He struck at 172. But that aside, there are a lot of seasons. He's played a lot of IPL cricket. I think he's played something like 14, 15 seasons. And a lot of those he's struck under 130. He had a really good Syed Mushtaq Ali trophy just before the new year. But for me, this looks like a big risk. You've got a guy who is closer to 40 than he is to 30, a guy who has often been a suboptimal striker. He has shown at least a desire to change that and certainly a capacity, although last year he kind of reverted to type. He was back to striking at 123 with a high score of 45. So to me, this looks like something which could cause KKR problems. I always think you want your captain in the IPL to be the first name on your team sheet, pretty much. What happens if Rahane hits a bad run of form like he did last year and suddenly the conversation comes, is he in KKR's best 11? I remember it happening with Aidan Markram at Sunrisers. And to me, that's something that can really disrupt a team. So I'm surprised. It's not the way I would have gone, but let's see how it turns out.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre decision because I think Rahane probably does have a role to play in an IPL side, but it's basically it feels like just such a guarantee. He's now got to be a guaranteed pick, right? So they're taking one of their major decisions away from themselves, and they're going to kind of back a batter. I don't know whether last year when they won it, Gotham Gambit, who went on to get the India job, became such a big part of the kind of narrative around them. I wonder if they're kind of thinking maybe that in the worst case, if they do have to drop him, he can kind of captain from the bench.
Yeah, I
If
guess
such
so.
things are.
And I mean, and we'll go into it. They don't have a huge amount, I think, of backup domestic batting. So maybe they have penciled him in or penned him in as a 14-game player, regardless of whether he captains or not. And they think that experience that he brings, I don't think Venkatesh has a huge amount of captaincy experience. So maybe they felt that he was really the only option, because I don't think, I mean, if you look through the overseas players, I think they'll probably go with Narayan, Quentin de Kock, Dre Russ, and one of Nortje or Spencer Johnson. I'll give you my 11 in a moment, Marky.
Yeah.
They probably don't see any of those captains. So maybe, yeah, he was really the only option.
I'd love to see a Dre Ross captain side. Give us what your 11 is then. Let's just get straight into it. No messing about here.
Okay, cool. So I've got Narayan and de Kock opening. I think there's a possibility they go Gurbaz over de Kock, but I would imagine they'll start with that pair up top. Then a middle order of Venkatesh Iyer, Jinky Rahane, Rinku Singh, Dre Russ, and Ramandeep Singh. And then the 4 bowlers, I would go Harshit Rana, Vaibhav Arora, one of Nortje or Spencer Johnson, Nortje if he's fit, Johnson if he's not, and Varun Chakravarti. And then with the 12th, adding a bit more batting muscle, Angrish Raghuvanshi, a name that I've been worried about saying all day.
But you got there, you did it. And I'm going to say you did a great job. I have no idea.
Thanks, man. Hopefully no one in India comes calling me out, as happened often when I was teaching in Sri Lanka and doing, the old register.
Yeah. Oh, dear. That was probably multiple hate crimes committed, but
it was a classroom of kids laughing the whole way through. But we live.
We live. They've got to kind of defend their crown. Do you think this team looks set to be able to do that?
I've got question marks about this team, Marky. The main one being that there's a couple of guys who are approaching uncle, if not granddad status. You've got Narayan, who's almost 37. You've got Rahane, who's almost 37. And you've got Dre Russ, who's going to turn 37 during the tournament. They got amazing returns from Sunil Narayan with the bat last year. Are those repeatable? I doubt it. Can Dre Russ keep being Dre Russ? I'm not sure. You've got to think that there's going to be a fall off at some stage. On the flip side, like that lower middle order of Rinku Singh, Dre Russ, Ramandeep, you've got to like it, right? You've got quality spin in the form of Chakravarti and Narayan. I think last year those guys were 2 of the best spinners in the league, right? Narayan took 17 wickets going at under 7 and over. Varun took 21 going at about 8. So that's a really high-class partnership. Harshit Rana's been one of the breakout strike bowlers. I think there's something interesting here. They picked up Umran Malik on the cheap. So if they think that he can be that extreme pace middle overs guy, given the fact that Nortje has been injured and hasn't been quite on it for the past couple of years, Spencer Johnson, my jury's still out about him. He bowls good balls. He's a left armer, but he gives you up some freebies as well. So if they think they can get back the Umran Malik that we saw for Sunrisers in 2022 and slide him into the 11, then that opens up another overseas slot. So they could go with someone like, they could go with Gurbaz and not have to use Narayan as an opener. They could throw a Moeen Ali or a Rovman Powell into the mix. So that's interesting for me. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year, but I don't think they're going to be terrible either. It's so hard to tell right before the tournament starts, but I'm lukewarm on KKR.
It's one of those things because it's a kind of, I know it's a very well established, and don't if you're listening or watching this, don't take this the wrong way around, because it's a kind of pop-up tournament that operates kind of 6 weeks a year. They don't need to think about kind of bringing players through as much, right? Because if this was a kind of county setup, or the tournament ran for longer, you'd be like, look at all your overseas players are basically all over 30, aren't they? Apart from Spencer Johnson and Gurbaz. it's becoming an old man's 11, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even becoming. It was an old man's 11 last year as well.
Yeah, they're old. I mean, we've been saying it for years. How long can they keep on milking Narain and Dreyrus? But it keeps on going, and they keep having success. I guess the flip side of that is that they've really had success bringing through solid young Indian players, right? Like the likes of Rinku Singh, Harshit Rana, and Ramandeep, and also here we go again, Raghuvanshi, who was really impressive last year, striking at 155. He only played 7 innings, but he was good when he batted. He's still only 20. So they've got a nice young Indian core. But you're right, overseas players who are long in the tooth. I'm interested to see how Quentin de Kock goes. You go back to 2-3 years time, I was looking at him as one of the elite top order left-handers in the game, but it feels to me like he's been off it for quite a while. He had a poor SA20 and he was batting 4 at some stages. He was batting 3. I mean, he's a guy who I think has always been an opener in white ball cricket. So yeah, it'll be intriguing to see whether he can bounce back on the biggest franchise stage of all.
Absolutely. Should we move on and have a chat about RCB, Royal Challenge Bengaluru? Obviously, they're a team that have, I think, often created their own challenges, because too often in the past they've not really matched up to the sum of their parts. What do you make of their squad this year? Obviously, Virat is still very much part of it. I know there was some talk before the auction that he might not be, and who they've brought in, because they've kind of changed it up quite a bit from due to the mega auction, right?
Yeah, they've changed it up quite a bit, and I think, I'll say this now, that I've probably got all these 11s wrong. I have the ones that I've predicted. They'll probably end up being different to everyone. Will probably end up being different to what I've said, because they're hard to pick. But KKR a lot of those players seem locked on. I think in RCB's side, there's a lot more room for debate, right?
Yeah.
I think this team.
I think. Can I just add, right? I think RCB squad to me makes more sense than KKR squad, because KKR squad, you just feel like there's some places that are that are just so fixed that you're like, right, what happens if that player goes out of form? In cricket, in T20 cricket, probably more so than almost any other sport in the world, players come in and out of form, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so I feel like that's one thing that RCB's got going for them. If you look at their cast of overseas players, for example, they've got Phil Sewell, Liam Livingston, Jacob Bethel, Tim David, Romario Shepherd, Nuwan Tushara, and Lungi Ngidi. And Josh Hazelwood. I'd be happy with any of those 4 guys being in my 11. So that's a really good thing, right? So yeah, they do have a bit more certainly overseas squad depth, I'd say. I think the one thing they're lacking is an established attacking spinner, wicket taking spinner. They brought in Krunal, who he'll do great for you defensively, right? I think he's never gone at 8+ through an IPL season. So he's a really good containing middle overs left arm spinner. But I don't see an attacking spin option. I like, on the whole, what they've put around Virat. I think that they've given him the best chance to do what he does and be successful doing it. But yeah, I don't know, even going through their 11, I think it's a weak.
Give us your 11 then. Go and then give us your 11.
Okay, I've got a couple of slashes in here because I don't know quite how they'll go, and I think I could have got this one completely wrong. But I would say they'll open with Kohli and Salt. I think we can be fairly comfortable about that. Rajat Patidar, who's their new captain, will bat at 3. He's another guy who strikes really high. So Salt, I think, struck 180+ last year. Patidar struck 177. So you paired Virat off the bat with 2 guys who can be explosive. Then I think they'll probably go DDP, Padikal at 4, partly just due to a lack of other domestic batters in their squad. One of Livingston at Bethel at 5, I would have thought. Probably
it's going to be Bethel, isn't it?
Do you think? I'd love to see Bethel get a long run, but Livingston seems to be an established IPL player. He is, I guess, bowling wise, he maybe offers a bit more than Livingston. I don't know. Could play both of them. I'd have Jitesh Sharma at 6, one of Tim David or Romario Shepherd at 7 as a kind of finisher. Obviously, Shepherd offers you bowling, which David doesn't. And then bowler wise, I think these 4 are locked on. You have Krunal Pandya, who can bat, can possibly float higher up in the order. Bhuvneshwar Kumar, Yash Dayal, and Josh Hazlewood.
You don't think they'll want a slinger?
I'd like them to have a slinger, but I can't see them not going with Hazlewood if he's fit and healthy. He does seem to always have a cloud of injuries hanging over him. So I think there's a good chance they could go with Tushara, but I think if Hazlewood is 100%, he's the man. I mean,
so I think if you fork out the money to buy someone with such a unique action as Neil Tushara does, I think you play him. I don't think. I mean, the other thing I will say, it's a long tournament, right? So you might want to play them in the second round of fixtures, or in the knockouts, or save them for something. That's what I would assume.
Yeah, I also think Lungi Ngidi is like an underrated player. We saw yesterday in that game against New Zealand, he took some tap at the back end, but his slower balls were really effective where the other seamers were getting smashed about. So on certain, good batting pitches, I think Ngidi is a really useful bowler. But like looking at those overseas players, I think you've got 8 good overseas players. I don't think you've got a standout there, right?
Yeah. But you see, I think they've, like, with their overseas, is they've looked for people to do specific roles. When you buy Phil Salt, you know what you're getting with Phil Salt, right? I'd say that the kind of wild card maybe in their overseas selection is Jacob Bethel, just because he hasn't played a huge amount of cricket at this level, right? So you're like, but he comes up with such a big reputation. He's one of those people that, all the data when you're going into an auction definitely would have been like, let's take a look at him. He's worth having a look at. So that's the only reason why I think if they've got him, they might use him, particularly because a lot of the people me and you had
breakout stars, right?
Yeah, me and you work with really rate him. So that's why I was like, maybe he could be the Fraser McGurk of this season.
I really like the look of him. I think he's bound to succeed sooner or later. I didn't actually give you a 12th marquee because I don't know who it's going to be. It could be Swapnil Singh, who's done all right. It could be Suyash Sharma. Could be Swastik Chikara, really young, raw, but rated top order batsman. Or it could be Rasik Dar. I think that people probably won't be that familiar with too many of those names, which gives a sense that their domestic bench strength doesn't look that strong. But I think Bhuvi's a really good addition, guy who can bowl 2 in the power play, 2 at the death. Dayal had a good year last year, and they've kept him above Siraj, which I thought was a really big call. He's got the left armour angle. Krunal will keep things tight in the middle. Hazlewood is a reliable middle overs performer. So I definitely think their bowling looks like an upgrade on what it was last year when they managed to overcome a terrible start and end up 4th in the table. So RCB could be good.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like if you could have done this podcast 15 days out from any IPL and always come up with RCB look good. And
yeah, I think you could. We always say that they sort of leave themselves short of death bowling, right?
Yeah.
And now at least they do seem to have options who can cover that. I think that I'm optimistic of a top half finish for RCB.
Shall we move on and talk about Sunrisers Hyderabad? We have the last year's runners-up. Very unlucky, I thought, to not win it. Getting to the final, on the run to the final, they're pretty much, I thought, the most exciting team to watch. They've kept Travis Head, Heinrich Klaasen's there as well. They've got Kamindu Mendes and Bryden Cast. Oh, sorry, Bryden Cast is withdrawn.
Yeah, Cast is gone.
Oh, dear.
They brought in Mulder to replace him.
Yeah, that's it. What you make of this side? Have they got stronger than they were last year? Have they addressed some of their frailty? or is it their kind of frailty? It's hard to answer that question until we actually see what style of cricket they're going to play.
Yeah, I think they're going to be explosive again. I think they're going to be really, really good to watch. Look, Abhishek and Head, best opening partnership in the composite. I think the best opening partnership the IPL or T20 cricket has ever seen. And I don't think there's any reason to expect that to change, right? I think they're going to be really, really good this year. They brought in Ishan Kishan, who I think will bat 3. I'll give you my 11, actually, Marky, while I'm at it.
Yeah, just give us our 11. I think that's a nice way of doing it. You just go to 11 and I'll tell you why you're wrong.
I would expect, actually, and people will probably disagree with this, that Kamindu Mendes might bat at 4 or will at least be in the team because they've got a bit of a lack of domestic batters again, which seems to be a slight trend. I mean, that's not to say that someone who isn't an established name won't come out and have a breakthrough season, because that does happen every year. But looking at things at the start of the year, there's certainly names that I'm not that familiar with. So anyway, Kamindu at 4, Klaasen at 5, Nitesh Kumar Reddy at 6. Those guys could be in a different order. And then at 7, I don't know where they'll go. They could have a Atava Taide, who did okay for Punjab last year in a couple of games, but he's really an opener. They could go with Abhinav Manohar, who's been around a bit but hasn't really done it in the IPL. Or they could go Aniket Verma, who's super inexperienced. I think he's played 1 recognized T20, but has done it in smaller competitions and seems to be highly rated. So there's an opening there. And then bowling-wise, Cummins, Harshal Patel, the returning Mohammad Shami, and Rahul Chahar. I think their 12th will probably be Unad Khat to come in and bowl some overs, possibly Simajit Singh. But yeah, I really like the look of that team. I think it's a shame that I'm going to say something that you might disagree with. They've got Zampa in their sort of list of overseas players. I think they'd love to sneak him in to the 11. I think he's probably at this stage a more accomplished T20 player than Kamindu. But I think the balance of the team means that it might be tricky to do that.
So the reason, if you are new to the big bag, the reason why Nick says I will disagree with that is because I'm unashamedly a Sri Lanka fan, and like all good Sri Lanka fans, I consider our natural enemy to be Australia. However, Adam Zampa is an incredible cricketer, so I can totally understand why you would make that statement and why you think I might be against it. But I am not against it. I can totally see the reasoning for having him in. I also whenever I see Pat Cummins play T20, I'm always reminded of that incredible 50 that he got a couple of seasons ago, and that actually he's kind of not useless with the bat. And I think there's lessons there for other bowlers to take, which is, if you want to get the big contracts, A, it helps if you're the captain of the Australian Test side, but B, if you're not the captain of the Australian Test side, work on your on your batting skills. Because if you swing the bat a bit, then the big bags will literally come your way. And also, I think if Pat Cummins is absolutely superb. There's no he brings a lot with the ball, but the fact he can bat a bit as well means that he's almost definitely getting into the side, right?
Yeah,
we've seen other big money Australian bowlers, when they've been bought by sides, they haven't necessarily actually walked in because they disrupt the balance too much.
And I think the narrative coming into last year's IPL was that he wasn't necessarily a kind of above average T20 bowler. And I think he managed to change that narrative. He was bowling in more phases. People were saying, oh, he's purely a middle overs bowler. He's quite limited. But I think he had a good IPL last year and really changed the narrative around him. Look, picking up Mohammad Shami, Harshal Patel, good pickups. I think that's a really strong seam bowling trio. Rahul Chahar, he's the guy who seems to have regressed for me over the past couple of years. I think last year was his worst year in the IPL. He seems to leak more runs and take less wickets than he did in his Mumbai Indians pomp. So that's something to keep an eye on. But look, I mean, when you've got Head, Abhishek, Ishan Kishan and Heinrich Klaasen in your top 5, you're going to cause some damage, right? They are very left-handed up top, but NKR had a huge breakout year last year and is a guy who's been drafted into the India squad very young. So I think there's a lot to like about this team.
Absolutely. Shall we move on to Rajasthan Royals and have a look at their squad?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about this team as well.
Yeah, there is. Should we just? I think let's start with you giving us your 11, and then we can kind of pick it apart a little bit from there because it's an interesting squad again.
Cool. Yeah, I would go, or I think they will go something like Jaiswal and Samson opening up. Nitesh Rana and Rian Parag 3 and 4. I don't know quite which. Oh, well, actually, Rana Parag, Dhruv Jarrell 3, 4, 5. I don't know quite which way those will bat. Hetmeyer at 6, Hasaranga at 7, Archer at 8, Dikshana at 9, Sandeep Sharma at 10, and Tushar Deshpande at 11. I imagine Shubham Dubey, not to be confused with Shivam Dubey, will be there 12th. He's a decent death striker. Something to keep an eye on. Could Vaibhav Suryavanshi come in as a 12th at some stage? He's about to turn 14. I saw he hit 71 of 42 opening for Bar against Baroda on New Year's Eve. So he's done all right in the Vijay Hazare. I mean, it would blow my little mind if we see a 14-year-old batting in the IPL. I don't think it will happen, but you never do know.
You never know. You absolutely never know, right? What about Fazil Farooqi? He's a pretty handy bowl.
He could come in. I've got to say, I wasn't that impressed with what I saw from him in the Champions Trophy. Potentially different surfaces. I think with two good domestic seamers, Sandeep Sharma kind of reinvented himself last year, right? As having been a power play bowler, he was incredible at the back end of innings. Tushar Deshpande is good. And then, I don't know, would you go Farooqi over Archer? I think Archer hasn't been at his best, but I think you've got to kind of back him that he will get back to somewhere. But you know, the longer he bowls, he might I don't know. Quena Mafaka is also maybe someone who they might consider, who I was impressed with in the SA20. He's still so young, bowling wheels, left armour, a lot to like about him. They've got good bowling depth. That's one of the things that I noted about them. They've also got Kumar Karthikeya, the spinner, who took bags of wickets in the SMAT recently. Hasaranga and Theeks, we've seen them operating together a lot, and they dovetail really well as a spin bowling partnership. Theeks, someone who can bowl in the power play as well, which is helpful when you've got seamers who want to bowl at the death. I like this team.
If you the team's quite, I like it, but I also think there's a few players who've got something to prove in this side, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think you'd say that there's probably quite a lot of pressure on that opening pair of Jaiswal and Samson. I think you've got to ask, can Parag have another year like he did last year? Dhruv Jarrell is someone who there's a lot of hype around him. I've never quite seen him. I don't think he's had a breakout year in the IPL yet. They don't have a lot of all-rounders. So is there quite a bit of pressure on Hasaranga batting in the top 7? There's question marks, I'd say, but I think that this is a good team.
Yeah, it's a good team on paper, but they've got to put it together.
And they've been a good team, haven't they, for the past couple of years, while falling off towards the back end of tournaments. They were 8-5 last year, losing their last 4 games. So, look, I think you'd have to expect Rajasthan to be at the right end of the table again this year. Whether they've got quite enough to go all the way, we shall see.
I wonder if they end up regretting buying a 14-year-old or 13-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, it looked crazy on paper, right? From what I would say, from what I've seen of the kid, he looks like the real deal. So whether it's a pick with 2026, 2027 in mind is quite possible. But as we've talked about before on this show, having a 14-year-old in your dressing room is just like weird.
Weird. It is. Yeah, it's really weird. Right, so we move to Delhi Capitals. Do you want to give us your 11, and then we'll kind of talk through it?
Yeah, I really, really like this team. I think they'll open with KL Rahul and Jake Fraser McGurk. I would go
Yeah.
Brook, Perel, Stubbs, 3, 4, 5. Akshar and Ashutosh at 6 and 7, depending on situation. Mitchell Stark at 8, Kuldeep at 9, Mukesh Kumar at 10, Natarajan at 11 in terms of a 12th. They could have Samir Rizvi to give some batting muscle. They could have Moet Sharma to add a bit of extra bowling, or they might have Karan Nair if, they get into sort of crisis and they need an experienced head to come in and play a sort of recovery innings.
Interesting idea, experienced head playing a recovery innings, isn't it? Because normally when you look at that 12th, you always look at it as a kind of somebody who's just going to smash the ball around to try and finish you strong, or somebody might pick up an extra wicket or break a partnership. It looks like quite a well balanced squad, this, right?
I really like the fact that, that the narrative surrounding KL Rahul has been well worn. Does he strike fast enough to contribute to winning an IPL trophy? And I think what they've done is surround him with really high impact batters. So you've got Fraser McGurk struck at 234 last year, Perel struck at 160, Stubbs struck at 190, Ashutosh struck at 167, and then Harry Brook, who you'd also expect to strike 150 plus. So if Rahul can have a good KL season, maybe scoring 600 runs at 135 strike rate, they should be well placed as a batting unit, I reckon. The caveat is that it's quite boom or bust, and those are the sort of players like Fraser McGurk's gone through a bad run. Brook can get low scores. So, if that's why I tout Karan Nair potentially as a rebuild man, because I do think this batting unit has the capability to score 250, but also to be bowled out for 90.
It's nice to see Faf pick up a contract at 40 as well, isn't it?
Yeah, man. Great to see a 40-year-old in the tournament. There's hope for us yet.
Yeah, exactly right. Any moment now, our call up is coming. Just Fraser McGurk, one of the standout stars of last season, he's gone away and he's played a lot of franchise cricket anywhere that will have him. Are you more excited today to watch him play his first IPL game than you were at the end of his IPL spell last year, or do you think he might have been found out a little bit?
Yeah, I've got to say, I haven't watched that much of him since the IPL, but I have seen a string of low scores. I was definitely more excited about him then. Look, the way he bats, he just goes after everything. And so clearly low scores can happen when you play that kind of cricket. You'd imagine that there'll be flat batting friendly wickets that will suit him in India. I'm sure we'll have great memories of that tournament last year. So I hope that we see the best of him. I'm still excited, not quite as excited, but I love this batting lineup. Ashutosh Sharma for me was one of the finds of the season last year. I thought he was great. Abhishek Perel was another guy who I wasn't too aware of. I thought it was a coming of age season for Tristan Stubbs. Excited to see Harry Brook back in the IPL. I think, some of the luster maybe has gone off Harry Brook as a white ball player, but I think he hasn't quite done it in white ball cricket the same way as in Test cricket yet, but he's clearly got all the talent to do so. And so, hopefully we see runs from him. And look, this bowling attack, Akshar and Kuldeep's a really good spinning partnership, right? Akshar will keep things really tight through the middle overs. I think he's only gone at over 7.5 once across an IPL season. Kuldeep's going to take bags of wickets. My issue would be what happens if you get injuries. As you said, Marky, it's a long season. Stark is a guy who has a tendency to not be the most durable, perhaps. Who are their backups? Do you trust Dashi Chamira to come in? There's lots of inexperience in terms of domestic players on their bench, guys whose names I'm not very familiar with. Manvant Kumar, Madhav Tiwari, Vipraj Nagam, Tripuna Vijay, they're all really young, really raw with no IPL experience. So if injuries hit or their best 11 doesn't fire, could things go down the drain for Delhi? I think possibly.
Possibly. We await to find out what happens. We're excited over here at the Big Bag. Let's talk about the Mumbai Indians. Should we start with what your 11 would be, and then we'll pick it apart like we did previously, Nick?
Yeah, man. Was this a hard one to choose? I'm not sure it was. Okay, so I go with Rohit Sharma will clearly open the batting. I think he'll open the batting with Ryan Rickleton rather than with Will Jacks. I think they have to play Rickleton because he's their only keeper aside from Robin Minns, who Robin Minns hasn't really done it just yet. So, yeah, Rohit and Rickleton opening the batting for me. Sky at 3, Tilak at 4, Hardik at 5. Obviously, that's really strong. Namandir at 6. Then at 7, I've put Santner / Jacks. If Jacks is going to be in, you'd expect him to probably bat higher than 7. But, Santner if you want a bit more bowling, Jacks if you want a bit more batting. Then Deepak Chahar at 8 and Mujib Bumrah bowl as the bowlers, with a 12th as one of probably Robin Minns or Raj Bawa.
Yeah. Arjun Tendulkar, do you think we'll see much of him playing?
We might see him get his sort of customary 1 to 2 games. I don't think we will, because their bowling's in better shape than it has been. But I mean, if Bumrah gets injured, then God knows what happens, right? That would send their season off the rails pretty fast. And Arjun might be the man to replace Bumrah.
Yeah, I mean, Bumrah is the most effective bowler in all of T20 cricket, right? In practically all of cricket. So, I mean, the whole thing is built around him.
Yeah, and I like what they've
very
done.
Productive overs every game. Yeah.
I like what they've done, bringing in Bolt and Chahar, who are 2 guys who are really good up front. So, I mean, you could potentially ride Trent Bolt for 3 overs in the power play, give Deepak Chahar 2, and then, Hardik and Mujib, also guys who are comfortable bowling in the power play. And that opens up the possibility to, really backload Bumrah, right? And I think if you're chasing a big score, and you come into those last 10 and you know that 3 of them, possibly even 4 of them, are going to be bowled by Jasprit Bumrah, it changes the equation quite considerably.
So a few weeks ago, we kind of, on this show, we were talking about how their satellite teams were starting to perform quite well. And there were signs that the Mumbai Indians might be returning back to the top of the franchise poll, as it were. When you look at this squad and compare it to the other squads, do you feel it is strong enough to A, compete, and B, to win it?
Look, I think a lot rests on Bumrah's fitness. But I think you'd have to say there's a hell of a lot of power in that top 5, right? Rohit.
Yeah.
Rohit past his best, but he's shown in the late stage of his career an intent which will serve them well. Ryan Rickleton, I think, is a coming star. Surya Kumar Yadav, just amazing, been one of the best batters in the IPL for 3-4 seasons running. And then you've got Tilak Varma, who I think is still getting better. Hardik Pandya showed in their semi-final against Australia that he can be a really dangerous finisher. He can hit 6s. And Namandir, another guy who's improving. You throw Will Jacks into that, who was great for RCB last year. That's the kind of team that can score you runs, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those sides that I just need to watch them play. I need to see how it actually pans out.
Yeah, and that probably won't be their 11. They'll probably bring someone random in that no one's ever heard of, because that's as they want to do. They've got, who've they got on the bench? They've got Khan Sharma, the aging leg spinner, I believe. They've got Lizard Williams. They've got Reece Topley, as mentioned, Minns and Bawa. If Bumrah stays fit all season, I think they're going to be really good.
Yeah, Bumrah stays fit and 2 or 3 of their batters hit good form. They're just going to be difficult to beat, right?
Yeah, which I think they will. I mean, also you'd hope that Trent Bolt's getting older. If he needs to be the same bowler that he was last year and take shitloads of power play wickets. If Mujib was great in the essay, so if he can have a good season, that's helpful. Yeah, I like this team. Again, I think it's a trend across all the teams that there isn't that much domestic batting backup. So maybe that's just resources are slightly thinned with 10 teams. So yeah, I'm keeping an eye out for some of those guys who we haven't heard of, maybe breaking in and becoming not quite household names, but big bag names.
Big bag names. Nick, should we leave it there for this episode of The Big Bag? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you haven't come across us before, hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, leave us your comments. We love reading them. We're going to be back next week with our second part of our IPL preview. We'll also be back much more frequently during the IPL as well, talking about what's going on. We will thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.